Thank you for that, Lawrence, and you have properly thanked all the folks that I would be doing as well, and so I appreciate that, and we appreciate the Finance Committee's work on this. You are correct. A lot of effort was put into making sure that we had a substantial carryover for this year, and I don't want to keep saying the same thing, but it's not by dumb luck that that happened. We did it intentionally. But to do that, a lot of things had to be delayed. So you'll hear that, you'll see that, and with that, I think you did a good introduction between you and the mayor's comments, but I think Mr. Yule, if you don't mind, Mr. President, if you could indulge us for a couple minutes, we'd like for him to talk a little bit about some stuff prior to Mr. Hawkins jumping in.
Mr. Yule.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the things that you'll find a little bit different in this budget in regards to capital improvement projects is we asked each department head to take on the first $100,000 of the expense and contain that within their own budget. Anything above and beyond $100,000 would then roll into the capital improvements budget 090. So you may see some different areas or different departments in the 090 budget where you see dollar amounts that are less than what we would typically see in a typical budget proposal. However, the first $100,000 was required to be maintained within each department's budget. Anything above and beyond 100 would then hit the capital.
Very good.
So going forward, starting with the police department budget, and through the course of that, you can see we do have a little increase with regard to some training. There's some training they couldn't go through over COVID, and we also have some new officers that are here as well. Also, you'll see that we have an increase with regard to vehicles. Bless you. Okay. We didn't have any rolling stock that was put in through the 2022 budget. But any questions, comments with regard to the police department budget? Moving on to the fire department budget. Questions, comments? Moving on to the health department budget.
Ms. McNear.
Thank you, Mr. President. This isn't a comment for Health Department, but I just wanted to point out that Mr. Williams is in the audience too, should we have any specific questions related to the budget too. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Seeing none. Moving on to the Parks and Recreation Department budget. And you can see again, as some discussion was about building maintenance, there's budgeted in there with regard to, so the public knows, replacing indoor track window ledge, lobby drywall repair, repainting walls, floor replacement, rental rooms, etc. Moving on to the building department budget. Waste collection budget. Public Works Department budget. Administrative office budget. Economic Development Department budget. Finance Department budget. Legislative body budget. Other commissions budget. Tax Department budget. General Administration budget. Again, you can see some building and maintenance repair, things that we did not do in 2022 that we had budgeted for that we're now going to take care of in 2023. Transfers and advances budget. Adult sports fund budget. Street maintenance fund budget. State highway improvement fund budget. One Ohio opioid fund budget.
Mr. Hawkins, and this is the one that was newly established, the council accepted monies for, and this is the newly established one.
And these funds are likely to be used for training and education.
Correct. Police, fire, health, so
Grants fund budget. And that's really an opportunity to see and commend all the folks from police, fire, health department in terms of all the grants that have been sought after and obtained, helping save a significant amount of money. Court computerization fund budget. Springdale Youth Boosters Fund budget. Commerce Park TIF Fund budget. Drug Law Enforcement Fund budget. Law Enforcement Fund budget. DUI Fund budget. Law Enforcement Training Fund budget. Insurance Trust Fund budget. Health Insurance Trust Fund budget. Street Improvement Debt Fund budget. Capital Improvement Funds budget. Improvement Funds budget is rather significant. Give folks time. Moving on to the Residential Recycling Fund budget. Tri-County Mall TIF Fund budget. Parks and Urban Forestry Fund budget. Northwest Business Center TIF Fund budget. Unclaimed Monies Fund budget. OBBS Assessment Fund budget. Fire Insurance Proceeds Fund budget. And lastly, revenues. Any questions, comments regarding revenues? Do you have a comment, question?
Mr. Anderson?
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. I was going to ask a general question at the end. Aside from saying this is exceptional work, like everyone else has described, I continue to be impressed, especially with the department goals and objectives that are in front of each of those. If people haven't taken time to look at those, it's really interesting and telling because it shows the priorities and how the departments are being measured, and then it links right back to the expenditures, which is really impressive to do for any city or any business, especially of our size. My question is just when, assuming it's approved tonight, when could residents expect to see this posted alongside the previous budgets online? I know all the past budgets are on there. When do you expect people would be able to see it?
Mr. Jones?
All right, well, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Williams takes care of getting that up for us. Jeff, do you mind addressing that for us?
Yeah, and I'm not rushing you. People who watch us page through this don't have the benefit of seeing all the work that's in here, and I just want to make sure you don't get inundated with public records requests when they could just go to the website.
We will post that in a timely manner after it is passed, when we pass the ordinance for first meeting of '23.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'd say 2 weeks, at least within 2 weeks after that,
Okay.
getting everything together.
So middle of January, people can expect, or
Yes.
end of January?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ramirez?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. President. Again, as a member of the Finance Committee, I want to thank Lawrence for running the meeting, but it's made so easy by administration putting together such a professional document. And we have over 200 pages here, and we just went through the whole thing without one question. So we could have had a lot of questions. We could have spent days on this, but all the possible questions and answers were already in this document. So I want to thank administration again. Thank you.
Well, and I would also say that the administration does yeoman's work of getting this out ahead so that we can digest it and get questions prior to, so make our operation that much more efficient and timely. So, Mayor Webster.
Well, as I said at the outset, this is the largest budget we've ever passed, and I would also like to congratulate Mr. Hawkins for getting through this in 20 minutes.
Record.
So the bigger, the faster, it seems like.
All right, well, Mr. Jones.
I'm sorry, just one more comment, going back to what Mr. Anderson said, referring to the mission statements. A couple years ago, more than one of our department heads said that, you know, we're doing these and nobody's reading them, and we need to discontinue. It's just a lot of work. So I took that to the mayor, and the mayor said those mission statements will stay, and that was the end of the discussion. So I appreciate you bringing that up. In fact, Brian and I will make sure at our upcoming staff meeting that we acknowledge that people appreciate it and they are in fact being read. So thanks for the comment.
Okay, well, we'll move into ordinances and resolutions. First off this evening, we have ordinance number 38, 2022. Ms. McNear, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 38, 2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 30 of the Springdale Code of Ordinances governing procedures at city council meetings. Whereas the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, Council has previously adopted certain rules and procedures contained in Chapter 30 of the Springdale Code of Ordinances related to the manner in which council meetings are conducted. And whereas Council seeks to promote informed, orderly, and transparent public participation at council meetings. And whereas in furtherance of these goals, Council seeks to amend the rules and procedures related to council meetings. Now therefore be ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, Section 30.05L of the Springdale Code of Ordinances shall be adopted to read as follows. 30.05L, members of the public shall be entitled to speak during communications from the audience for a period of no more than 5 minutes unless granted additional time to speak by the President of Council or an affirmative vote of the majority of council. This time limit shall not be inclusive of questions asked of the speakers. Those speaking during communications from the audience shall address their comments to members of council, not to the audience. Section 2, Section 30.05M of the Springdale Code of Ordinances shall be adopted to read as follows. 30.05M, communications that are received by the Clerk of Council Finance Director shall not be read at council meetings unless it constitutes official business upon which council is required to be informed or take action. Communications received by the Clerk of Council Finance Director that are not required to be read at council meetings shall be distributed to the members of council and the city administrator along with any response that is provided. Communication shall contain sufficient credible information to identify the author. Credible identifying information shall include the sender's true name and at least one of the following: an email address, a mailing address, a telephone number, or other similar credible information to allow the author's identity to be verified. Screen or username shall not constitute credible identifying information. Anonymous communication shall not be read at council meetings or distributed to members of council and the city administrator. Communications appearing to be bulk in nature, such as form letters and mass mailings or emails, shall not be read at council meetings or distributed to members of council and the city administrator. Section 3, Section 30.05N of the Springdale Code of Ordinances shall be adopted to read as follows. 30.05N, the President of Council or other presiding officer reserves the right to rule out of order disruptive, threatening, profane, abuse, slanderous, or otherwise unprofessional conduct of any council member or meeting participant that impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. Any person determined by the President of Council or other presiding officer to be violating this rule or engaging in conduct defined in RC 2917.22, which obstructs or interferes with the ability of council to conduct the meeting may be ordered to cease engaging in the offending conduct, and if they continue, may be removed from the meeting by the president of council or other presiding officer. Section 4, that this council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 5, that this ordinance shall be effective from and after the earliest period allowed by law.
All right, council, this is the third reading, now in final form. What is your pleasure?
Second.
Motion second. Discussion, Mr. Braun?
I would just remind council that the version that you're reading today is amended from the way that it appeared in the previous versions in the packet. So prior to moving to adopt, I would ask that you move to adopt the amendments and then adopt the amended version of the ordinance. I also just wanted to thank the members of council. I think almost every person sitting up here, when I was going through my notes and prepared this final version, contributed in some way to this. And I hope that you're happy with the final language that we incorporated that you provided to us. Again, as I was talking about in a prior ordinance, when we get that large amount of participation, sometimes you have to get all the ingredients right, but I do really like the way this reads, and I hope you do as well. So thank you.
Well, for housekeeping, let's get the motion to accept the amendments.
Do I need to make the motion? Am I just okay to make a motion? I'd like to withdraw my motion to adopt.
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay.
And then I'd like to make a motion to adopt the amendments as read.
Second.
Okay. Then let's vote on the adoption. Well, discussion. Ms. Gantos says on the amendments, or, okay.
I have one comment on the amendments, if that's all right.
Sure.
I did want to echo what Mr. Braun said. I especially like the adjustments that were made. I know there was a lot of feedback, and when I received the updated ordinance, I was impressed with how you were able to incorporate all of our different ingredients as you described them into this final product, especially how you adjusted 3005M, talking about how we address modern ways of addressing council. How do you get credible information? The way that's described here is very understandable for people that would want to understand how to connect with us. So I appreciate the work that went into these amendments. So thank you for that.
All right, then, Ms. McNeary, poll council on accepting the amendments.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mrs. Gantos?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez? Aye. Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye. The motion to accept the amendments as published passes with 6 affirmative votes.
Move to adopt?
Second.
Motion second. Discussion, Mrs. Gantos.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm in favor of the language. It did turn out really well. And I'm going to go back to what I said last meeting, is about the functionality of it. So did you give any, Mr. Vanover, did you give any more thought to a device that will be used? So, I'm happy to see that, because as we're talking about, comments from the council won't go against people's time and so on and so forth. I was trying to visualize how that was gonna,
Right.
on, off, and so that it's fair, always, but also so that it can not be disruptive to the person who's trying to
Right.
tell us what's on their mind.
Sure.
So anyway, that eases my mind quite a bit. Thank you so much.
Mr. Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under Section 2 about identifying the author of the document, will that actually be validated in some way? Are we actually going to call or check the email or phone number? Or how do we validate that it's a valid communication from a letter?
Mr. Yule.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we're going to take it for face value as long as it looks to be credible. I don't think we're going to do any major digging to verify the identity of the sender, just provided there's information that we can go back to either request follow-up or have some kind of dialogue or further correspondence with the sender. As long as it looks like it's credible, we'll move forward with it.
I'm just, have a vision of all the PETA type situation we had, where we get all these letters with just a phone number on it. Is that gonna be valid?
Yes, so, well, in the second section of M, we talk about anonymous communications and/or things that appear to be bulk in nature. So if it's form letters that are being sent by different organizations, then there won't be a response.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, still in discussion? All right, Ms. McNeil, you poll council.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mrs. Gantos? Aye. Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye, ordinance number 38, 2022 passes with 6 affirmative votes. Next up, we have ordinance number 40, 2022. It does include an emergency clause. Ms. McNeil, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 40, 2022, an ordinance amending various building inspection fees contained in the Springdale Code of Ordinances and declaring an emergency. Whereas the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio Council has previously adopted building inspection fees which are discussed and contained in chapters 93, 123, 151, 152, 154, 155, and 156 of the Springdale Code of Ordinances. And whereas council seeks to adjust the various building inspection fees and the regulations related to them. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, chapters 93, 123, 151, 152, 154, 155, and 156 of the Springdale Code of Ordinances shall be amended as reflected in the attached Exhibit A, which is incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, that this council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which results in informal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3, that this ordinance shall be effective from and after the earliest period allowed by law. Section 4, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall, subject to the terms of Article 2D, 3D of the Charter, be effective immediately. The reason for the emergency is the need to begin charging the applicable building inspection fees according to the attached amendment effective January 1st, 2023.
All right, council, have heard the reading of ordinance number 40, 2022. It does include the emergency clause. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Mr. Braun?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to make a quick point that under the street and sidewalk fees, under street aprons, we did correct a Scribner's error. There's no need to amend under it. There was just a typo that read special event versus street apron. And we corrected that, so the version that you have is correct. I just wanted to make that point in case someone had noticed it. Thank you.
Still in discussion? All right, before Ms. McNear polls council, I just want to take a moment and thank Mr. Lamping for the work that he put in. This improves the service to our residents. Those of you who were not privileged to deal with one of our contractors that we have engaged several years, I cannot tell you how happy this makes me. It simplifies the process, and it brings control into us. We're not saying, well, we're waiting to hear from so-and-so and so-and-so. And quite honestly, with the projects we have on horizon, this is very timely and needed greatly. So thank you for that. All right, Ms. McNeil, your poll council.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup?
Aye.
Mrs. Gantos? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
And next up, we have ordinance number 41, 2022. Ms. McNear, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 41, 2022, an ordinance adopting a supplemental appropriations estimated receipts to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures and adjust estimated receipts for the city of Springdale, Ohio for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022. Whereas the supplemental appropriations are necessary at this time to provide for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Springdale during the fiscal year 2022. Be it ordained by the council of the city of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that in order to provide for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Springdale for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, the following sums be and are hereby set aside and appropriated as adjusted. The legal level of budgetary control for annual appropriation purposes is as follows. The general fund at the departmental level, personal service expenditures, and all other expenditures. All other funds at the fund level, personal service expenditures, and all other expenditures. The general fund departmental level is hereby defined as documented in Exhibit A, which is attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. Adjustments to the general fund at the legal level budgetary control are documented in Exhibit B, which is attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference. The final 2022 appropriations at the legal level of budgetary control as defined above are included as documented in Exhibit C, which is attached hereto and incorporated by reference. Also, that in order to provide for the current budgeted receipts, estimated receipts are hereby adjusted for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022. Section 2, that the Clerk of Council Finance Director is hereby authorized to adjust transfers and advances to the following funds. Decrease the transfer from the General Fund 010 to the Capital Improvements Fund 090 in the amount of $1 million. Decrease the advance from the Tri-County Mall TIF Fund 093 to the General Fund 010 in the amount of $31,068. Increase the advance from the Grants Fund 070 to the General Fund 010 in the amount of $10,000. Increase the advance from the General Fund 010 to the Grants Fund 070 in the amount of $637. Section 3, that additional appropriations be made to the following funds. Street Maintenance and Repair Fund 061, Personal Service Expenditures, $5,000. Other expenditures, $25,000. State Highway Fund 062, Personal Service Expenditures, $4,000. Law Enforcement Training Fund 084, Personal Service Expenditures, $15,500. Residential Recycling Fund 091, Other Expenditures, $2,000. Northwest Business Center TIF Fund 095, Other Expenditures, $150,000. Ohio Board of Building Standards Fund 097, Other Expenditures, $1,800. Fire Insurance Proceeds Fund 099, Other Expenditures, $100. Section 4, that appropriations be decreased to the following funds. General Fund 010, 085, 086, $840,000. And you can see the general fund adjustments by department in Exhibit B. One Ohio Opioid Fund 065, Other Expenditures, $1,000. Capital Improvements Fund 090, Other Expenditures, $6,900,000. Commerce Park TIF Fund 080, Other Expenditures, $200,000. Tri-County Mall TIF Fund 090, Other Expenditures, $31,279. Springdale Youth Boosters Fund 072, Other Expenditures, $400. Section 5, that estimated receipts be increased to the following funds. Law Enforcement Training Fund 084, $18,400. OBBS Assessment Fund 097, $1,800. Fire Insurance Proceeds Fund 099, $40,000. Section 6, that estimated receipts be decreased to the following fund. Capital Improvements Fund 090, $6,900,000. Section 7, that the Clerk of Council Finance Director is hereby authorized to draw warrants for payments from any of the foregoing appropriations upon receiving proper certificates approved by the Mayor or the City Administrator or upon effectiveness of an ordinance of council to make the expenditures. Provided that no warrant shall be drawn or paid for salaries or wages except to persons employed by authority of and in accordance with law or ordinance. Provided further that the appropriations for contingency can only be expended upon approval of 2/3 vote of council for items of expense constituting a legal obligation against the city and for purposes other than those covered by other specific appropriations herein made. Section 8, that it is found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and related to the adoption of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including Section 121.22 Ohio Revised Code and the rules of this council adopted in accordance therewith. Section 9, that this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period allowed by law.
All right, council, have heard the reading of ordinance number 41, 2022. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Seeing no lights, Ms. McNear, poll council.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup.
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins.
Aye.
Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Mrs. Gantos. Mr. Ramirez.
Aye.
Mr. Vanover.
Aye. Ordinance number 41, 2022 passes with 6 affirmative votes. And next up, we have ordinance number 42, 2022. Ms. McNear, when you're ready. Yeah.
I brought the big bottle tonight. Ordinance number 42, 2022, adopting a temporary appropriation ordinance for the period January 1st, 2023 until the fiscal year 2023 permanent appropriation ordinance is adopted by City Council. Whereas it is necessary to adopt a temporary appropriation ordinance for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Springdale for the period January 1st, 2023 until the permanent fiscal year 2023 appropriation ordinance is adopted, and whereas there will be sufficient receipts to meet these needs. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that a temporary appropriation is hereby adopted to provide for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Springdale for the period January 1st, 2023 until the permanent fiscal year 2023 appropriation ordinance is adopted. Section 2, that said appropriations are as follows: $700,000 to the general fund, funds 010, 085, and 086. $20,000 to the street maintenance, repair, and construction fund 061. $5,000 to the state highway fund 062. Section 3, that the clerk of council, finance director is hereby authorized to draw warrants for payments from any of the foregoing appropriations upon receiving proper certificates and vouchers herefor. Section 4, that it is found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and related to the adoption of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including Section 121.22 Ohio Revised Code and the rules of council adopted in accordance therewith. Section 5, that this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period allowed by law.
All right, council, you've heard the reading, excuse me, of ordinance number 42, 2022. It is a fiscal ordinance. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Seeing no lights, Ms. Meader, poll council.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup.
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins.
Aye.
Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Mrs. Gantos. Mr. Ramirez.
Aye.
Mr. Vanover.
Aye. Ordinance number 42, 2022 passes with 6 affirmative votes. And next up is ordinance number 43, 2022. Ms. McNear, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 43, 2022, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 46, 2021, and providing for wage increases for certain city employees effective January 1st, 2023, and declaring an emergency. Whereas the City of Springdale, the city, periodically adjusts compensation paid to city employees, and whereas ordinance 46, 2021 is the most recent ordinance which established compensation rates for certain city employees. Be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that ordinance number 46, 2021 is repealed beginning January 1st, 2023, and shall be replaced with this ordinance to reflect wage increases for certain city employees as set forth in Exhibit A, which is attached and incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, the revised compensation to be paid to the city employees contained in the attached Exhibit A shall be effective January 1st, 2023. Section 3, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 4, that this ordinance shall take effect from and after the earliest period allowed by law. Section 5, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall, subject to the terms of Article 2D, 3D of the Charter, be effective immediately. The reason for said declaration of emergency is the need for proper pay grades to be in place at the beginning of calendar year 2023 and to allow for the continuity of services to the public.
All right, council, excuse me. Heard the reading of ordinance 43, 2022. It does include the emergency clause. What is your pleasure? Motion second, discussion. Mayor Webster?
Yes, just a brief explanation. All the pay grades have been adjusted by 2%, and all of these amounts have been reflected in the budget which you just previously adopted. So to be consistent with your actions, I would hope you would follow through and pass this.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Along with that, again, this is for all non-union employees. Both our fire and police union are currently in negotiations with the administration.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I know last year we talked about the effect inflation and a weird job market had on just hiring in general. We get the reports from Mr. Coleman every month about the work that goes in for applications for a lot of the jobs. Are we still competitive enough that we're getting the right applications and retaining the right people? It feels like we are, but I just want to make sure if there's something else we need to do or give you so that you can be successful. I mean, obviously let us know, but this is enough.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I think if we ask the employees, it's never enough. So when I say it's not about the money, Mayor, it's always about the money. We're still highly competitive. We've made some small adjustments that we thought were necessary with the support of civil service, and we appreciate that. But when we look at our police and fire as an example, we're not at the top, we're certainly not at the bottom. So we're in between, but on the upper end. So yes, we're very competitive. And we appreciate that. This council's been extremely supportive of folks getting increases. In fact, this is my 5th year here that you guys have given increases to the staff every year, and I know they appreciate that. You have anything else with that?
Okay. Ms. McNear, your poll council.
Mrs. Gantos? Aye. Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye. Ordinance number 43, 2022 passes with 6 affirmative votes. All right. Next up is Resolution R-25, 2022. Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to make a motion with regard to R-25, 2022, and R-26, 2022 to table for our first meeting in January. I don't think there's any business that's going to be conducted by either of those committees this time, and afford the opportunity for all council members to possibly be present.
Motion second, discussion. Ms. Weiscup?
I just want to be clear, the only reason that you're wanting to table is so that we have the full council, correct? I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and while we're talking about this, we're still looking for nominations on the Springdale Tax Review Board. So, all right, any other discussion? Ms. McNear, your poll council on the process to table.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Gantos? Aye. Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mrs. Sullivan Weiscup?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye. Resolution, do we have to individual, Mr. Braun, to keep everything on table?
I asked Mr. Yule, was the motion for tabling 25 and 26, or just 25?
Yeah.
Then you don't have to vote, they can be tabled together.
Okay. All right. Next up then is Resolution R-27, 2022. Ms. McNear, when you're ready.
Resolution number R-27, 2022, a resolution confirming the mayor's appointment of Jeff Singleton to serve as a member of the City of Springdale Planning Commission for the term ending November 30th, 2023. Whereas Don Darby has resigned from the City of Springdale Planning Commission, and whereas the mayor has announced the appointment of Jeff Singleton as a member of the City of Springdale Planning Commission to fill the unexpired term of Don Darby for the term ending November 30th, 2023. Now therefore be it resolved by the council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, with members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that Jeff Singleton be and is hereby confirmed as a member of the City of Springdale Planning Commission for the term ending November 30th, 2023. Section 2, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period allowed by law.
All right, council, for the, excuse me, resolution R27, 2022, what is your pleasure? Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to make the same motion table based on the idea that Ms. Sullivan Weisskopf indicated they're not going to meet until February. I know ordinarily they'd have a meeting the second week of January, but whatever the council's prerogative is.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do think this one might be different because it's mayoral appointment, and the reason I think it's important to have Mr. Jacobs be present is the opportunity to provide nominations for the two positions that are council appointed. So I'm certainly open to tabling if other people feel it is, but I think this one's different for that reason.
Well, we've got a motion and a second on the table, so unless they're wanting to withdraw, we'll continue on. Discussion? All right, Ms. McNear, you poll council on resolution R27.
Mrs. Gantos? Aye. Mrs. Sullivan Weisskopf?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Aye.
Mr. Ramirez?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye. Resolution R27, 2022, appointing Jeff Singleton to Planning Commission is passed with 6 affirmative votes. All right, that concludes ordinances and resolutions. We're in old business. Is there any old business to bring before council this evening? New business? Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Very briefly, hopefully you've noticed it's a little brighter in here this evening. We want to thank our Public Works Department. They've changed everything that can be changed without going to outside contractual services. At some point, when we remodel in here, we'll certainly do that. But I didn't get all the explanation as to why that is, but we're much brighter now than what we were. And Ms. Sullivan Weisskopf tells me, don't ever fix those 3 out front. So there may be some debate on that in the future, but I did want to point that out. And just briefly, since I have the floor, I just want a special thanks to Stephanie Morgan for all her work, Mr. Yule and Mr. Williams and all the department heads. Really pleased with how the budget unfolded, and I just want to thank you for that opportunity.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Along the same line of the lights and the updates in this room, I think about 3 months ago, we had talked about administration was looking into audio upgrades, and that was linked to a commitment or a soft commitment we had made to upgrade our streaming options for the meetings. I know we do something with ICRC, but there was a second, I don't remember what it was, it was Facebook or something. Is there an update that we can get on those updates?
Mr. Yule?
The only update I have is there is no real update to share. We did have some discussion with ICRC. We have been working with a couple different AV vendors. In fact, we've had 2 of them come through. We have a 3rd one coming in tomorrow to kind of talk about our audiovisual equipment to see if there's something else that we can do to enhance some of those. So as they make suggestions, we'll take those back to ICRC and see if there's something else we can do, but it's still a work in progress.
Well, that was the mic updates. I know, for what it's worth, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on the streaming that was turned on several months ago, and we were looking at expanding that. So if that's still an opportunity for us to do, I think we should continue down that path. So if there's maybe I'll check back in a couple of months, but it is worthwhile. People are using it and looking at it, so I think that's important.
Correct.
Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. A question for the administration or Mr. Braun. Is there do we have an ordinance with regard to panhandling on right now? And If we do not, is there a constitutional way to address that, or is that not an option?
Mr. Braun?
When I first came on as your law director, we had an issue related to panhandling, and I remember looking at it. I can't remember as I sit here what it says, but I commented at the time that those are ordinances that you have to update regularly because there's been a lot of litigation on what is and isn't acceptable. I'd be happy to look at it and report back to you.
I would appreciate that. There have been a couple different locations at Northland and Route 4, as well as, I know everybody's seen an individual sometimes on Route 4 right by the 275 exit. And Sam's Club as well. But if there's an opportunity there for us to legislate that, I'd appreciate you checking out.
I will
please.
report back to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Just as a follow-up to that, and thank you, Mr. President, every time we are contacted, and several folks up on the dais here contacts us regarding that, and when it's witnessed, and we appreciate that, our police always respond. Basically, at least as things are written at this time, as long as they're not impeding traffic, they have a constitutional right or legal right to be there, but many times, as soon as they step off the sidewalk and approach the car, now they're impeding traffic. So there are some things we can do within the realm of following the law, but the key word, according to our police chief, is that they have to be impeding traffic. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that, as Mr. Braun said.
All right. Still new business? All right, meetings and announcements. Mr. Ramirez?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Fireman's Fund, as required by the state of Ohio, met December 4th. Present were Mr. Anderson, Chief Stanley, myself, and a newly elected resident, Sharon Brenner. It's only a matter of doing our due diligence and meeting once a year. I think the only thing, and I don't know if we want to bring it up, that we haven't had any cases in forever, I believe, for this fund. But we did dig up one. There was a fireman that works part-time in the city of Cincinnati, worked his shift here and went home and had a heart attack and passed away in 2020. So Mr. Anderson has taken the task of following up on that and see if maybe he's eligible for some of these funds.
All right,
That's all I have.
okay. And still in meetings and announcements? Mr. Yule?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to announce that Civil Service will meet in the council conference room on Thursday, January the 5th. Sorry. Looking at the wrong calendar. January 5th, 2 p.m. One other announcement that I would like to share. The city has recently migrated our phone service over to Ring Central. If you check your emails, there's probably an email sitting in your inbox regarding account setup. So there are designated numbers assigned for each council member. I would highly encourage you to log in and get the account set up. It does expire in 48 hours. I had had Ring Central resend the announcement or welcome email this afternoon, so it should be there. It takes us a couple of minutes to get set up. It does offer a lot more mobile functionality than what the Mitel system had, and also allows to text through the city assigned phone number as well. So if you do have any issues or problems with it, feel free to get a hold of myself or Anthony Pagan. We'll be happy to walk you through it. Additionally, if you can't get to it and the welcome announcement expires, feel free to get a hold of one of us and we can resend it so that you can get reset.
All right, didn't see any more lights. Communications from the audience. Is there anybody in the audience like to address council? Second call? Third and final call. We'll close communications from the audience. Mr. Hawkins, we'll go to you for an update on legislation still in development.
As you review your internal memorandum, item number 1 was addressed with ordinance number 38, 2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 30 of the Springdale Code of Ordinances governing procedures at city council meetings. which, as amended, passed with a 6-0 vote. Item number 2 is addressed with ordinance number 40, 2022, an ordinance amending various building inspection fees contained in the Springdale Code of Ordinances and declaring an emergency. That passed the 6-0 vote. Item number 3 was addressed with ordinance number 41, 2022, an ordinance adopting the final appropriations and transfer ordinance for 2022, which passed the 6-0 vote. Item number 4 was addressed with ordinance number 42, 2022, an ordinance adopting a temporary appropriations ordinance for the period of January 1st, 2023 until fiscal year 2023. Permanent appropriation ordinance is adopted by the city council. That passed the 6-0 vote. Item number 5 was addressed with ordinance number 43, 2022, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 46, 2021, and providing for wage increases for certain city employees effective January 1st, 2023, and declaring an emergency, and that passed the 6-0 vote. Item number 6 was tabled. Item number 7 passed the 6-0 vote with regard to planning commission appointment. All other matters are forthcoming.
All right, staying with Mr. Hawkins, we got a recap of legislative items requested for the next council meeting.
We have an ordinance adopting the annual appropriations estimated receipts for fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023. We have a resolution for authorizing the investment in municipal funds, a request for a resolution requesting advance payment from the county auditor. We also have resolutions confirming charter revision as well as tax review board and possibly the nuisance ordinance as well.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just going to make sure we included that ordinance enacting Chapter 139, abatement of chronic property nuisances.
Okay. Administration, we good? Okay. Before we go to item 17, I'd just like to take this brief time to wish all of our neighbors and fellow residents and their families a Merry Christmas and wishes for a blessed New Year. And we will be back in it shortly thereafter. So I have item 17 before us.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second, council's adjourned.